If you can learn to regulate your emotions, you can have a very powerful, positive outlook on your life. This was essentially the takeaway from my very powerful last mind yoga session with a client. So this client expressed a challenge around their emotional regulation, being able to regulate themselves emotionally. And as a result, they would find themselves kind of dropping out, essentially disassociating from their conscious experience and dropping into a state of unconscious and zoning out. And this was proving problematic for them, naturally. And the reason for this is sometimes the emotional regulation, the emotional experience that we're having can be so overwhelming that we just can drop into a space of disassociation. What's required is learning the tools and capability to have the emotional mastery so that this isn't a problem. And that comes from learning to attune oneself to one's somatic internal experience, as well as the cognitive experience, the recognition that, oh, I'm having an experience of anxiety in my body right now. How can I effectively deal with that so that it no longer is an issue for me, or at least it's manageable? And at the start of our session, this person spoke into how there was an anxiety around and dealing with this anxiety, that there was this knot or ball, and that they didn't want to deal with it, or that it was going to be very challenging, and what was being anxious about was having to deal with this, and that it was going to be really painful. And I expressed with this person that that's not my school of thought. Having been a massage therapist, I have a rule that you can't massage too deep, only too quickly. And this is saying that a lot of people, from my experience, and I think at some point I was one of them when I was a client rather than being a practitioner, was having this expectation, especially around sports massage, that this is going to be really painful, and it needs to be painful to be effective, and that's really what it has to be, otherwise it's not going to be any good. And I disagree with this. It doesn't have to be painful if it's done correctly and mindfully, in going slow and easing into the massage, easing into a knot. It invites the release. It's counterintuitive to attack tightness overbearingly, because it creates tension. When massaging people, and even when I was being massaged, if I was experiencing pain, my body would tighten up. And that's not conducive to relaxing and massaging out that knot. And the same is true in mind yoga. So we have these knots of consciousness, these mental, emotional knots that reside in, sometimes physically in our body, emotionally, but also in our consciousness. And what mind yoga does is effectively massage them out. So like with a physical massage, it can create freedom, it can create ease of movement. And I'm of the same school of thought that rather than be aggressive in the approach, rather than it be painful and unpleasant, there's a way to do it that is enjoyable, is a way that invites relaxation and a surrendering into the release, rather than having to suffer through it. this speaks into the tantric teachings. So it's this idea that there are these mental and emotional impressions in the tantric school of thought. The mental and emotional aren't separate. They're the same layer of consciousness. And that the emotional is more the somatic expression, vibration of consciousness, and the mental is the more analytical thought end of that spectrum of vibration of consciousness. But it's all the same, and that's why you can't have a thought without a feeling or a feeling without a thought. They're intertwined, they're interlinked. And so these impressions, these samskaras, they create knots of consciousness within us, whether you want to imagine that as somatically or actual knots. It can, as it's all one expression, they're just different layers of consciousness. Mental, emotional impressions, knots, scars, can lead to dis-ease in the body, can lead to actual physical dis-ease. And that's why it's important to deal with it at a mental, emotional, and energetic level so that it doesn't become detrimental physically, ill health. And so what's required in this system is the digestion of these knots, being able to effectively digest them, deal with them, so that consciousness can flow freely and that we can move freely through the world. And so when navigating the world, the experiences that we have don't get stuck because of these knots of consciousness, but can continue to flow through us, and it doesn't cause us issue, it doesn't cause us problems. We can just carry on. We have a strong energy body. We can digest the things that we experience and continue enjoying and succeeding and surrendering into life. And this is what we do with Mind Yoga. This is what I do with Mind Yoga, is I take you on that journey. I become your mental emotional massage therapist and have the approach that it doesn't have to be painful. And I don't even need to know what occurred, really. It can be done without having to touch on the pain point, or at least deal with what created it. Just like in physical massage, I don't necessarily need to know what activity you did to create the injury or to create the scar tissue or not in your body. I simply need to know where it is and what limitations you're experiencing so that I can massage around the area and create the relief you're needing. And this is true in Mind Yoga. I don't need to know the trauma exactly that you went through. I just need to know how it's presenting itself and how it's inhibiting you moving freely through your life. And in doing so, we can begin to massage it out so that you can do the necessary digestion so that it's no longer an issue for you. And this is the value of Mind Yoga. And what we ended up doing in this session was going on this beautiful journey of exploring what it is that creates safety and peace for this individual so that they can find that relief in their body. It ended up being this beautiful scenery of the sunshine in Australia and the beach and the velvety satin soft sand and the rhythmic lapping of the mesmeric nature of waves, and that created a beautiful sense of peace and calm that invites the digestion of the dis-ease, the undesired feeling in the body. And the thing is, whilst this worked for this person, it's all individual, it's all different, and that's why I work with people individually with Mind Yoga, because we're all unique expressions of divine consciousness, which means what's necessary for you in your massaging out isn't going to be the same for anyone else. And this is why generic things that you can find online are helpful, maybe to a degree, but they don't effectively resolve the challenge that you're going through. With the rapidity is the word I was going to use, but with the speed that you can have that relief by. Think of it like a massage. If I was having a very set practice and a set method of how I was massaging someone, and not taking into account their individual needs, desires, and sensitivities, then I wouldn't be a very effective massage therapist. And the same is true for Mind Yoga. In being able to have a conversation with you, in understanding what it is that you need specifically, we can begin to create the relief together so that you are empowered to digest that consciousness and find the relief that you're looking for. But only through conversation can we do this. And this is the power, the benefit, and the use of this Mind Yoga practice. So if you are recognizing that you are having maybe balls of stress or knots of stress in your body, and you haven't figured out how to deal with that, then one, having the tools and the language to do that. This is why I created the scale of receptivity with my partner. You can find that on our Sex.Prayers community page. The scale of receptivity is a tool we created so that you have the language to express where it is that you are, what it is that you are feeling in your emotional and somatic response and experience. It's a really useful tool we created so that you don't need a lot of language. It's built on the traffic light system. It utilizes colors and numbers and has an actual visual representation, so you can actually point to what it is that you're experiencing, to be able to label it so that it can be able to process and dealt with, not just by you, but the people around you and the people that you interact with. Really helpful, useful, beautiful tool that my partner and I use all of the time. So if that's interesting to you, if you're wanting to begin to find the language to deal with this, then go to our community page. I can leave a link in the description, or just reach out and let me know. Find the scale of receptivity. We'll also have a demo of our check-ins where we use that. A really great starting point. And then being able to have a conversation where we can start to understand the mental, emotional knots that are unique to you, maybe with that ball of stress or anxiety or whatever it is that you're experiencing, so that we can effectively deal with that in the language and the way that is most impactful for you.